And so it happened. The dreaded scenario of Abs-cbn shutdown just happened yesterday with the cease and desist order issued by the NTC National Telecommunications Commission against Abs-cbn to shut down. All right, so let's get the facts of this case, shall we? Okay, so according to the NTC, or the National Telecommunications Commission, they're just following the law, and that's total bullshit. Okay, that's total bullshit. And we know that it's political, and I'm not a fan of ABS-CBN. In fact, I've never been an avid, watcher or follower of this network ever since I was a kid. I remember, watching Eat Bulaga. So Eat Bulaga has been with GMA7 for years, although Eat Bulaga was also part of ABS-CBN and other networks. But, I'm not a fan of the network. But for the sake of freedom, of liberty, which is now a passe in this country. A lot of people think that the talking about freedom and liberty is nonsense. It's no longer applicable to our times, as we've this is a new era. That's how and what people think about freedom. But freedom is timeless. It's a concept, really. It's a very complicated concept that we all need to understand. So some say freedom is limited. The freedom of speech is when it comes to big corporations like media corporations is limited, and it's a matter of privilege. Okay, it's not a right, it's a privilege, they say. So that's the reason why we have this congressional franchise given to big corporations. And I was even in up until now a very strong critic of ABS-CBN and our media networks, because let's just say it's karma. And ABS-CBN has has some share of the blame, okay, because it's been like promoting this mediocre culture, status culture. And the reason why I'm saying it's karma is because ABS-CBN was shut down by a big government, but ABS-CBN has been protecting and promoting status culture. What I mean by status culture, okay, the fact that they are funding or subsidizing by way of their support of protectionism, for example. And that's the reason why I said that the issue of freedom and liberty is somewhat complicated in light, with this issue of ABS-CBN shutdown, and especially that I'm talking about karma. All right, I'm not saying it literally, but figuratively. All right, although I'm a very strong critic of ABS-CBN, I'm still holding on to that long time tested adage that goes, whatever happened to the saying that I may disapprove of what you say, but I fight to death, to death. You're right to say it. That time tested motto or saying, which is timeless, okay, on its own. And it's applicable to all times, to all circumstances, to all types of societies. And what I'm trying to say is ABS-CBN has been like promoting protectionism. All right. And when we talk about protectionism, we get into the realm of constitutional issues that ABS-CBN and other news media, the traditional media as we know them, like, for example, GMA7, they were supporting, probably silently or in private, protectionism, because unknown to or unbeknownst to many people, probably millions of people, the Philippine media industry is protected from from foreign competition, and we don't have free press basically. All right, because all of these oligarchs in this country, the old rich, observe that the owners of the media are old rich. They've been rich for so long, and they were able to acquire so much wealth by supporting protectionism. They don't want competition. And probably, if we're gonna dig deeper into the history of protectionism in this country, the Lopez's, the owners of ABS-CBN. By the way, ABS-CBN, I'm sorry, GMA7. Okay, I'm referring to the owners of GMA7. All of these people supported protectionism. And if we're going to look at history, for example, JMA7, okay, we're going to talk about JMA7. JMA7 was owned by an American missionary, if I'm not mistaken, or a philanthropist, okay? I forgot his name, but I think he was called Uncle Bob. And he was forced to give up his ownership of the JMA7 because of protectionism. So when they changed the law, it started as a very small company, and then it was in 1974, if I'm not mistaken, when the Parity Rights Agreement ended. And when it ended, a lot of Americans, a lot of foreigners who had the same right as Filipinos had in America, it's parity rights. So if you can own land or property in the U.S., by rule of reciprocity, Americans should also have the same rights that Filipinos enjoy in America here in the Philippines. So that's the parity rights. It's the principle of reciprocity. So if you're enjoying the same rights as an American citizen or as a Filipino citizen in the United States, then American citizens should also have that rights and privilege in the Philippines. But that ended in 1974, and the owner of GMA7 was forced by law, okay, to give up his ownership of the company to the new owners. I think goes on, was the lawyer who was a friend of the American owner of the TV station, or not yet probably a TV station, probably a radio station. I don't exactly know this story, but that's the the summary of it. So he was forced. The American owner of that, the former GMA7, was forced. That's the reason why it's called Greater Manila something. That's the name of GMA. Greater Manila area, if I'm mistaken. Let's gonna check into that. So I'm just doing this real time in live. So, and the Lopez family, was protected from competition, and they supported protectionism. And if we talk about protectionism, it's big government. The government must have so much power to enforce protectionism. All protectionist countries like China, for example, the biggest protectionist nation in Asia is North Korea, in which no private property at all. Right, so there's a degree of protectionism. If it's half, we have 60-40 protectionism in the Philippines, in which if if foreigner is going to invest here, they need to give up 60% of the equity, the business equity, to Filipino. And who do they give up this share to? The 60% to oligarchs, to old rich people. All right, that's the process. Or they're gonna hire a dummy like probably Manuel V. Pangilinan, which is a continuous conspiracy theory that Manny V. Pangilinan is a puppet of an Indonesian billionaire. We don't know. It still remains a conspiracy theory, but we love conspiracy theories if they have some truth in them. So they protected protectionism. They supported the Lopez, the owners of these media institutions, and they are protected 100% from competition. Nobody. That's the reason why they have this case. The Malacanang Palace. Duterte and his minions have this case against Rappler. All right, because they have this Meteor. That's the name of the billionaire Meteor Group, uh, owned by an American billionaire, a philanthropist. They say, who holds Philippine depository something. That's an investment vehicle that will allow them, the foreign investors, this American billionaire, the owner of the Meteor Group in the U.S., to control or probably own parts of Rappler. But according to law, that's legal. Okay, that's according to the Supreme Court. So still, the ownership belongs to the Filipino owners or establishment of Rappler, and Rappler was hit by the Malacanang Palace for that. But in the case of ABS-CBN, they need renewal of their franchise, and as we've seen, Duterte was like doing his very best to distance himself, politically distance himself from whatever his minions below were doing. They're trying to please him. The Solgen, for example, in this country, was trying to appease and please the president. The heads of the NTC as well were trying to please and appease the president. All right, probably they would like, they're so ambitious that they would like to run as senators in the future, and that's what they think of President Duterte. They probably think of him as a tyrannical, stupid, or power hungry nutter. Okay, we don't know. We don't have access to their stupid brains, but that's probably what they think of him. That even we've seen so much noises in over the past days that they're so outrageous. For example, let me just give you an example. The one government official, head of this anti-corruption group, his name is Emmanuel Luna, sought to investigate the vice president because the vice president was like competing with the government by providing goods and free rides to the Filipino people, and that Emmanuel Luna suggested that the vice president be investigated, and that's so outrageous that even Duterte was aghast during his press briefing. He was livid and he fired that man. And another guy from the DOLA, Department of Labor and Employment, would probably like to appease and please the president. They threatened DOLE officials in Taiwan, threatened a Filipino OFW for posting nasty and malevolent post in Facebook. And Taiwan immediately responded saying, "We respect the rights of OFWs in Taiwan." Pahiya ang mga bobo, mga ganon. Pahiya ang mga taong gusto magpalapad ng papel. And we have also the sorry case of Harry Roque, the spokesperson of Duterte, who, in trying to probably appease Duterte and China, he insulted Taiwan by saying that Taiwan is subservient to China, that the decision is up to both Taiwan and China, and that insulted officials in Taiwan who are fighting for their independence. So why don't we just make the Philippines the province of China then? Okay, why does or did Mr. Roque have to say that? Why did they have to insult millions of people in Taiwan who are fighting for their independence, just to state some kind of statement that doesn't make sense at all? I don't know what he's fighting for. Ano ba yung pinaglalaban ng putang inang Roque na yan? We don't know. Okay? So I'm saying these expletives because I learned from the master himself, which is, or who is, the president himself, Rodrigo Duterte. We've seen how he delivered his press briefings, uh, called Late Night with Duterte's, over the past days. And now we have another man, uh, Salvador Panelo, attorney Salvador Panelo, who unfortunately was my former law professor. All right, he was my teacher, my professor in criminal law too. And according to my classmates, he's not that really good as a professor, actually. He's so mayabang, he's so boastful. But one thing that I admire about Panelo is that he would bring his autistic son. He has this autistic son that I've heard died over 3 years ago. He's not ashamed to bring his autistic son to the class, especially during exams. And the son was like so behaved, sitting in the corner and looking at his crush. He was somehow infatuated to one of my classmates who was a friend of mine as well during my law school. So that's something that I admire Panelo about. But regarding his behavior, there's something wrong with it. Really, he's a power hungry, sociopath. He's craving for power. Now let's go back to the franchise issue, and that's the reason why I said I just had to lay down some kind of history or some kind of political background of this country for you to understand what I'm coming from, where I'm coming from. So I'm a critic of the traditional media in this country, in the sense that these traditional media, led by ABS-CBN and GMA7, are supporters of protectionism, and it's like the this is the logical consequence, okay, of their inaction, of their uh, indifference when it comes to liberty, when it comes to economic freedom. So they called for it, they deserve it. But it's not just about ABS-CBN, you people. This is not just about ABS-CBN. If they could do this to a big uh, telecommunication giant, a TV network, they could do this to anyone, regardless of which side of the political spectrum you're on. Whether you're for Duterte, what if the the next administration is not your bet, okay? Uh, that's something that we need to think about. So that's the reason why I started this live read with the saying, I disagree or I disapprove of what you say, but I will fight to death your right to say it. Because if this thing could happen to you today, same thing will happen to me as well anytime in the future, and it could happen to anyone. So right is timeless. The freedom of the press is something that we need to cherish. We don't have Second Amendment and First Amendment in the Philippines, although we adopted the Bill of Rights from the Americans. So that's where we got the Bill of Rights. But we don't call it Second Amendment. The right, the freedom of the press in the Constitution shall not be abridged. The right to speech, etc., shall not be abridged. Okay, not even Congress can abridge or limit it. So in America, they have the First Amendment, the freedom of free speech, the right to talk, the right freedom of thought. It includes freedom of thought. And they also have the Second Amendment. They have the Second Amendment in order to protect the First Amendment, okay, the freedom to talk and to think. Okay, the Second Amendment is their right to bear, arms. Okay, they need that because the right to bear arms in the United States is not to be used against, private citizens. It's a deterrent to tyranny, should that tyranny happen in the future, right? And Americans are lucky that President Trump is for both amendments, the First and Second Amendments. However, in this country, we have a nincompoop, president, a power-hungry president surrounded by power-hungry, minions, very ambitious minions who are willing to dismantle, bastardize whatever rights that we have to advance their, political career. And that's so scary as a Filipino nation, because it's so scary because if, like I said, you might like what's happening to ABS-CBN if you're a Duterte, but what if the shoe is on the other foot? Okay, and that's something that you wouldn't like to see happen for any, industry you like or any entity you like in the future, if the next administration is not your bet. Anything can happen. This is a very dangerous precedent that we have to go through as a nation. So ABS-CBN might have deserved this draconian power it's been supporting over the past years, but I'm not supporting ABS-CBN just because I like ABS-CBN. No, that's not the case. That's not what it's all about. I'm supporting ABS-CBN because I love my rights, because I look forward to the future in which everybody is free to speak and to think without being threatened to be shut down like what happened to ABS-CBN yesterday. So this is not, in defense of ABS-CBN. This is in defense of my and other people's rights that we have in the future. So we need to savor the rights that we have today, as long as we have it, since we have it, because it might be all gone in the future, because we have a lot of Filipinos, cheering. They were like cheering and applauding the government for shutting down ABS-CBN because they simply don't like the network, without taking into account their rights and the rights of their children, that a lot of people of ABS-CBN are gonna go jobless. We don't know if the government is just bluffing ABS-CBN. It's just like punishing them to probably this is probably like a deterrent to other networks to watch your mouth, watch your language, watch whatever news that you're gonna spout or you're gonna spread, because the big brother is here and it can shut you down anytime if it wants to. Okay, we don't know, because the NTC, according to this news, this reason I had this pulled up, they're just following the what kind of law you're talking about. So it's like ABS even lost the technicality war. Okay, so this is congressional franchise. Okay, only the Congress. It's an act of Congress, an act of the people, because Congress represents the people, that can extend and can shut down a franchise. Okay, so of course this is political. Congress did not extend it because the Congress is subservient to the will of the Malacanang Palace. Okay, we have a bastardized political system. It's unlike the system they have in the United States. A lot of people were saying, why don't you just follow whatever the president says? And why? The question is why. Okay, why would I follow? Why would I stay silent? And why would I just listen to them? Why can't I just express my mind? And these people have this mini tyrant, thinking that if all of us are going to obey, then we will achieve progress, which is a stupidity, which is a very dangerous culture that we as a nation could develop. Okay, and I'm saying that because if you're gonna look at other countries, all developed countries, all prosperous countries, United States, Canada, Australia, the UK, the European nations or countries, they all have free speech, and their politics is so toxic, especially the politics in the United States today. They have the most toxic politics. They have two-party system. The Democrats fighting the White House, the President Trump, and they set up the President of the United States. They have this impeachment trap, and which was not supported by the majority of the United States citizens, and it fell because it was a bastardized impeachment process, and the Democrats, okay, set up a President Trump. They spied on him as a candidate, and when he won the presidency, the Obama Democrat Party set him up, frame him up using the FBI and the whole intelligence community. Okay, that's the reason why we now have the case. We've been here. I don't know if the Philippine media has been reporting this matter or this news, but the case of Major Lieutenant General Flynn, for example, Michael Flynn, who was set up by the FBI under Comey, Peter Strzok, and McCabe. He was set up in the White House. Comey sent his minions to the White House without telling, Flynn that he was spied upon days before the meeting, and that he was under investigation, and that he was not advised that he needed a lawyer. And we now have all these documents, proving that Flynn was set up. He was a national advisor, incoming national advisor of Trump after he won the presidency in 2016 up to 2017, and Flynn was set up there and then at the White House. Okay, so that's how toxic and dangerous American politics is. But look at them; they're so prosperous. They're so prosperous because American people are not stupidly obedient to the whatever is in power. In fact, they are now, protesting lockdowns in many states, especially in Michigan, Virginia, in New York, and California. So the American people, so we cannot simply say that they're so stupid for protesting the lockdown measures that the states are imposing, the governors of states, because America is a federal government system. So the states have their own laws, and they have their own lockdown rules, unlike here in the Philippines, in which our lockdown law is being dictated upon by the president of this country, President Duterte. So I've seen a lot of Filipinos mocking Americans. Why are you protesting lockdowns? Because these people are not obedient, stupidly obedient and naive like Filipino people. And that's the reason why they're so rich, they're so prosperous. They fight for their freedom. They have the Second Amendment, and if they feel that their rights are threatened, they can rise up against the government and fight, the powers that be. But here in the Philippines, we have, a cabal of gangsters, political gangsters at the Malacanang Palace, threatening all the rights that we have, the remaining rights. And it's so unfortunate that, we're living and we're having this issue during the coronavirus era, during the coronavirus period, that we are fighting this virus. And it's so disheartening that I have a former professor of mine, Attorney Salvador Panelo, who claimed that, in trying to condition the minds of the Filipino people of a possible martial law. It was saying that the coronavirus is an invasion. Thus, we need to declare martial rule. And I said, well, the the invader is not the virus. It's the CPP, the Chinese Communist Party, right? They've been invading our territories in the Spratly Islands, the West Philippine Sea. They've been trying to extend their territorial scope in the West Philippine Sea, and that's something that the government should be focusing on instead of all of these draconian rules in order to suppress the Filipino people. Instead of facing the bigger bully, the smaller bullies in this country are trying to bully the defenseless, the weak, the poor, those who cannot defend themselves. Okay, so what we have is a cry bully administration who doesn't have the backbone to fight the real bully. They're tr- by f- they're, instead of telling us why the hell they don't want to fight the real bully, they try to scare us. Why should we fight China if they can simply destroy us? Well, that's not what courage is all about. It's not, it's if you're gonna fight someone, it's not about fighting that person with arms, with weapons. It's by standing up to that bully, like what China and not China, but Taiwan and Hong Kong are doing. It's like what the Filipino uh, OFW in Taiwan is doing. Is she's standing up to her right against the bigger bully in the Philippines, President Duterte and his minions at DOLE, or the Department of Labor and Employment. That's what courage is all about. It's not whether you can kill him with a gun, okay, or whether you can do it, or whether you have the ammunition to defend yourself. It's fighting for your right when you're in the right. Okay, that is what and freedom and courage is all about. So, my advice to ABS-CBN, because as you can see, NTC is like claiming here that, all right, technically you're dead, because the Congress did not extend your congressional franchise, and so we're simply enforcing the rule, or the law, that since your renewal is not extended, then we need to shut you down. So that exactly is what NTC is saying here, and we have all these people saying, okay, we defend ABS-CBN, etc. And it's so unfortunate that a lot of talents of ABS-CBN, like Vice Ganda, Robin Padilla, are supporters of the very person that destroyed their own, or tries to destroy their own employer, right? So my advice to ABS-CBN is, why not just identify as a POGO, okay? Philippine Offshore Gaming something, POGO, okay? Identify as POGO, because as we all know, this Chinese-owned offshore gaming's operations, gaming operation in the Philippines are being allowed and are being justified, in fact, by the Duterte government to operate, because their operations are necessary during the lockdown. All right, and they identify as a BPO. So, what I meant to say is, why don't ABS-CBN just identify as a BPO like Pogos did? Okay, I need to amend what I said earlier, but they can also identify as Pogo, because according to the government, the operations of Pogo is or are necessary during the lockdown. Gambling is necessary, really. Well, according to Roque, those gambling are not in the Philippines, but they are in China. The people working for these offshore gaming operations are Chinese people. So according to the administration, that's essential activity. I don't know, but so my advice to ABS-CBN is they should identify themselves as either POGO or BPO. Okay, that will probably get them off the hook. So they don't need to have a congressional franchise, really. And one of the senators of this country is right by saying that, you know, the categorization of POGO as a BPO is actually dangerous legally. And well, that's how stupid people in the government are in this country. So this rant is actually pretty long already. What I'm trying to say here is I support ABS-CBN because I support my right to speak. So a lot of people were saying, "Oh, this is a corporation you're trying to defend, etc." This they can still do broadcast through YouTube, etc. But that's not what this is all about. You know, if they can do this to a corporation, they can do this to anyone. All right, and the right to association, to form a group, a corporation, whatever that is. And that's the reason why these media organizations in this country should support free market, a limited government free market in which anybody can compete. I don't mind, you know, allowing foreign corporations, even Chinese corporations, to compete in our media industry here, because I don't think Filipinos are stupid. Okay, they hate propaganda. They know Filipino people are intelligent and smart. They know, you know, a propaganda when they see it. Okay, and they know BS when they see it, and they have a BS at the Malacanang Palace. So let other companies, whether it be foreign or domestic, compete in our industry, because a protectionist government is a big government. It's a fascist government. That's the definition of fascism. The corporate, the merger of political and corporate power. The government saying, you know, everything, dictating things. And we do have like corollary or some kind of limited rights to property, but the government can take that right away and say that's just a privilege. And that can happen to you if the shoe were, were on the other foot, or if you don't like, the one calling the shots at the Malacanang Palace. So take note of that. It can happen to you, it can happen to anyone. This is again Uncensored Asian Vlog, and have a good one to all of you.